Sign the paper or get back on that stagecoach." Silas Cade shoved the marriage contract across the table, his voice flat emotionless. "I don't need a wife. I need help running this ranch. Nothing more." Clara Johnson didn't touch the pen. Instead, she met his cold stare with fire in her eyes. "Then you picked the wrong woman. I didn't travel 800 miles to be your servant. That's exactly what you signed up for." "No." Clara stood her chair, scraping violently. "I signed up for partnership, for respect, for a chance at a real life. You want a silent, obedient shadow? Find someone else." Silas's jaw tightened. This was supposed to be simple, transactional, emotionless, safe. But this woman was already destroying his carefully constructed walls, and she'd been in Montana less than an hour. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the end. Comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far our story has traveled. The marriage certificate dried on the preacher's desk while Silas loaded Clara's single trunk into the wagon. She'd brought so little, it almost insulted him. One trunk. That's all her life had amounted to. That everything, he asked, everything that matters. The 2-hour ride to his ranch passed in hostile silence. Silas kept his eyes on the rutted mountain road. Clara sat rigid beside him, her hands folded in her lap, studying the wilderness that would become her prison or her salvation. She hadn't decided which yet. When the cabin finally appeared, Clara's stomach dropped. It wasn't the rough-hewn logs or the smoking chimney that disturbed her. It was the complete absence of anything that suggested a woman had ever lived there. No curtains, no garden, nothing soft. Silas jumped down and grabbed her trunk without a word. "I can carry my own things," Clara said. "Didn't say you couldn't." He hauled it inside anyway. The cabin's interior matched its exterior, functional, cold, barely alive. A table, 2 chairs, a stove that had seen better days, and in the corner, a bed that made Clara's throat tighten. "You'll sleep there," Silas said, nodding toward the bed. "I'll take the floor until we figure things out." "We're married," Clara said. "The floor seems unnecessary." Silas's jaw worked. "We're married on paper, that's all. Then why bring me here at all?" Clara dropped her traveling cloak on the table. "You could have hired a cook. You could have paid someone to clean. Why go through the trouble of a wife?" The question hung between them like smoke. "Because hired help leaves," Silas finally said. "A wife is permanent." Permanent. Clara tasted the word. Like cattle. Like a partnership. A partnership requires 2 people making decisions together. Clara crossed the room, her boots echoing on the wooden floor. "From where I'm standing, you've made every decision so far." Silas turned toward the stove, dismissing her. "I'll get dinner started." "No." Clara's voice stopped him mid-step. "I'll cook. That's why I'm here, isn't it? To take care of the domestic things you can't be bothered with." "I can cook just fine." "Then let's see who does it better." It wasn't a challenge, it was a declaration of war. Silas recognized it immediately. This woman hadn't come to Montana to be quietly grateful. She'd come to claim her space, and she'd fight for every inch of it. He stepped back from the stove. Clara won the first battle. She cooked with sharp, efficient movements, her hands quick and certain. Silas watched from the table, supposedly mending a leather strap, but really studying this stranger who now shared his name. She didn't ask where things were. She searched, found, adapted. Within an hour, she'd located supplies he'd forgotten he had. When she placed the plate in front of him, Silas stared at the food. Actual vegetables, seasoning. It wasn't just fuel, it was a meal. "Your first wife," Clara said, sitting across from him. "She taught you to cook." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "We don't talk about her. Because it hurts or because you've decided she doesn't matter anymore." Silas's fork clattered against his plate. "Who the hell do you think you are?" "Your wife." Clara didn't raise her voice. "Which means I live in her shadow whether you talk about her or not. I'd rather know what I'm competing with." "You're not competing with anyone. She's dead." "Then why does this cabin feel like a shrine to her absence?" Silas shoved back from the table. his chair scraping violently against the floor. He grabbed his coat and hat. "I've got work to do. It's nearly dark. Ranch doesn't care what time it is." He slammed the door behind him. Clara sat alone in the silent cabin, her untouched plate growing cold. She'd pushed too hard, too fast. But she'd learned long ago that the only way to survive a hard man was to be harder. She cleaned the dishes, banked the fire, and prepared for bed. When Silas finally returned 3 hours later, she was already under the quilts, her breathing slow and even. He stood in the doorway watching her sleep. She wasn't sleeping. The next morning arrived brutal and cold. Silas was already gone when Clara woke, which was fine. She had work to do. The cabin might be his by ownership, but she'd make it hers by transformation. She started with the windows. Years of grime had turned the glass nearly opaque. She heated water, found rags, and scrubbed until her shoulders ached. Light poured in for the first time in what must have been years. "What are you doing?" Clara spun around. Silas stood in the doorway, covered in dust from the morning's work. "Cleaning." "I can see that. Why?" "Because I can't live in darkness." She wrung out the rag. "And neither should you." Silas stepped inside, squinting against the sudden brightness. The cabin looked different, bigger somehow, more alive. "It's just dirt," he said. "No." Clara climbed down from the chair she'd been standing on. "It's 3 years of grief you've been hiding behind. You don't know anything about my grief." "I know what it looks like when a man gives up." Clara faced him directly. "My first husband gave up too. He gave up on himself, on me, on everything. He drowned himself in whiskey and excuses. I spent 5 years watching him disappear. I won't do it again." Silas's eyes narrowed. "I don't drink." "No, you just bury yourself in work and silence. Different method, same grave. If you're so unhappy here, the stagecoach runs every week." "I'm not unhappy." Clara picked up another dirty rag. "I'm just not willing to pretend this is enough." "It's what we agreed to. We agreed to a practical arrangement. We didn't agree to live like ghosts." Silas wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. This woman had been in his home less than 24 hours, and she'd already pulled apart the careful structure he'd built around his pain. It terrified him. "I've got fences to mend," he said, retreating toward safety. "Silas!" Clara's voice stopped him. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to build something here. We can't build on rot." He left without responding. The pattern continued for days. Silas would work from dawn until exhaustion, avoiding the cabin and its new occupant. Clara would transform another corner of his carefully maintained emptiness. Clean shelves. Mended curtains she'd found in a trunk. Fresh herbs hung to dry. Each change felt like a small invasion. On the 6th day, Silas came home to find Clara in the barn. "What are you doing out here?" He'd assumed she'd stay confined to domestic spaces. "Your mare's favoring her left foreleg." Clara stood in the stall, running her hands down the horse's leg with surprising skill. "There's heat in the joint. She needs rest and a poultice." "I know how to care for my own horses." "Then why haven't you—" Clara straightened, meeting his stare. "You're so busy running from yourself you can't see what's right in front of you. And you know horses now." "My father bred them before he died." Clara moved to the next stall. "I grew up in stables. Just because I ended up in a bad marriage doesn't mean I forgot everything I learned before it." Silas watched her examine his other 2 horses with practiced efficiency. She moved like someone who belonged among animals, her touch confident and calm. Another surprise. Another crack in his assumptions. "The gelding needs better feed," Clara said. "He's losing weight. Winter's hard. Winter's an excuse." She faced him again. "You've got good stock here, Silas. But good stock needs good care. You can't just survive, you have to actually live. That applies to horses and people." "You're lecturing me about my own ranch now." "Someone needs to." Clara walked past him toward the cabin. "Dinner's in an hour. Try to show up hungry instead of angry for once." She left him standing in the barn, furious and bewildered, and something else he couldn't quite name. That night, Silas actually sat at the table while Clara served the meal. Real vegetables again. Bread she'd baked that afternoon. The cabin smelled like a home instead of a way station. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" he asked, surprising them both. Clara paused mid-bite. "My mother, before she died when I was 12. And then I raised my 3 younger brothers while my father tried to drink himself into an early grave. He succeeded when I was 17. The brothers scattered. I married Thomas because he seemed stable." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out stability was just a word he knew how to say." "He hit you, not with his fists." Clara met Silas's eyes. "But there are other ways to hurt someone. He hurt me by making me small, by telling me every day that I wasn't enough, that I'd never be enough, that my only value was in keeping quiet and keeping house." "But you answered my ad anyway." Silas leaned back. "Seems like you just traded one quiet arrangement for another." "No," Clara's voice hardened. "Your ad was honest. You didn't promise love or lies. You offered a transaction work for security. Thomas promised everything and delivered nothing. I'll take honest emptiness over beautiful lies any day." Silas studied this woman across from him. She wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense. Her features were too sharp, her manner too direct. But there was something compelling about her refusal to bend. "I won't ever love you," he said quietly. "That part of me died with Rebecca. I'm not asking you to love me." Clara stood collecting the plates. "I'm asking you to see me, to acknowledge that I exist beyond my usefulness. That's all." "That's not nothing." "No, it's not." The confession hung between them, fragile and real. 2 weeks passed. The cabin continued its transformation from tomb to dwelling. Clara planted a winter garden in a southern-facing spot with good drainage. Silas watched from a distance as she worked the frozen ground with determination that bordered on defiance. The neighboring ranchers started to notice. Tom Brennan rode over one afternoon with the feeble excuse of borrowing nails. "Heard you got yourself a wife, Silas." "News travels fast. Small community." Tom craned his neck, trying to see inside the cabin. "Mail order, they say." "They say a lot of things." Clara appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "You must be Mr. Brennan. I'm Clara Cade." Tom's eyebrows shot up at the confidence in her voice. "Pleasure, ma'am. Just wanted to welcome you to the valley." "That's kind." Clara's smile was polite but distant. "Silas, don't forget we're fixing that south fence this afternoon." She disappeared back inside, leaving Tom gaping. "She works the ranch with you. She does what needs doing." Silas handed Tom the nails he'd supposedly come for. "Same as anyone." After Tom left without the nails, Silas noticed Clara emerged again. "You didn't have to claim me in front of him," she said. "I didn't claim you. I stated a fact." "You called me your wife, used my married name. That's claiming." Silas turned toward the barn. "Don't read too much into it." But Clara smiled to herself as she returned to her work. Small victories. The real shift came during a late-night snowstorm. Silas woke to the sound of the barn door banging in the wind. He grabbed his coat and boots ready to secure it when he realized Clara's side of the bed was empty. He found her in the barn, already soothing the panicked horses. The storm had blown a shutter loose, and the crashing noise had spooked them badly. "I've got it," Silas shouted over the wind. "I can help." Clara held tight to the mare's halter. "Just keep them calm." They worked together, Silas fighting the shutter, while Clara managed the frightened animals. By the time they'd secured everything and returned to the cabin, they were both soaked and shaking. Clara immediately started building up the fire. "You should have woken me," Silas said, stripping off his wet coat. "I was already awake. No point both of us freezing." "It's dangerous out there alone." "I wasn't alone once you arrived." Clara hung her wet cloak near the fire. "That's what partnership means, Silas. We don't have to do everything together, but we show up when it matters." Silas wanted to argue, but she was right. She'd handled the crisis with the same calm competence she brought to everything else. No hysterics, no demands, just action. "Thank you," he said quietly. Clara turned surprised. For what? For not being helpless. It wasn't a compliment exactly, but coming from Silas, it was close enough. I'll make coffee, Clara said. We're both too cold to sleep now anyway. They sat at the table as the storm raged outside, drinking coffee and listening to the wind howl. For the first time since her arrival, the silence between them felt comfortable instead of hostile. Tell me about Rebecca, Clara said finally. Silas's jaw tightened. Why? Because she's here, whether we acknowledge her or not. Because I want to understand what you lost. Understanding won't change anything. Maybe not, but secrets rot, Silas. I know that better than anyone. He stared into his coffee for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. She was good, not perfect, but good in ways that mattered. She laughed easy, made friends everywhere. This valley loved her. He paused. She got pregnant after 2 years of marriage. We were happy. Careful, but happy. Clara waited, giving him space. She went into labor early, too early. The midwife came, but there were complications. The baby, our son, he didn't make it. And Rebecca... His voice cracked. She bled out before dawn. I held her hand while she died, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do to stop it. Clara reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. He didn't pull away. That's why you don't want love, she said softly. Because you think it only leads to loss. Doesn't it? Sometimes. Clara's grip tightened. But shutting yourself off from feeling doesn't prevent pain, Silas. It just guarantees you'll live in it forever. He looked up at her, this strange woman who'd invaded his carefully constructed numbness. And you think you can fix that? No, I think you can, if you choose to. The conversation ended there, but something had shifted. Silas didn't pull his hand away for a long time. The next morning dawned clear and bitterly cold. Silas woke to find Clara already dressed, pulling on her work boots. Where are you going? South pasture. You said yesterday the fence needed mending. I'll handle it. We'll handle it. Clara grabbed a second pair of work gloves. Together. They worked side by side in the freezing air, their breath forming clouds between them. Clara proved surprisingly skilled with fence repair, another hidden talent revealed. Your father taught you this too? Silas asked, driving a post into the frozen ground. My father taught me that waiting for rescue was a fool's game. He taught me to be useful. You're more than useful, Clara. She stopped working, meeting his eyes across the fence line. Say that again? You're more than useful. It was the first real acknowledgement that she existed beyond her function. Clara felt tears sting her eyes, but blinked them away quickly. Thank you, she whispered. They finished the fence in silence, but it was the good kind, the kind shared by people who were starting to understand each other. That evening, as Clara prepared dinner, Silas did something unexpected. He pulled out a second chair and actually helped. It was awkward. He clearly had no idea what he was doing, but the gesture mattered more than the execution. You don't have to, Clara said. I know. He clumsily chopped vegetables. But maybe I want to. Clara smiled, and for the first time since arriving in Montana, she felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Not love, not yet, but possibility. The possibility that this cold arrangement might thaw into something real. They ate together, talking about the ranch, the weather, the neighbors. Small talk, but it was talk nonetheless. Connection. The thing Silas had sworn he didn't need. As Clara cleaned up afterward, Silas spoke from the doorway. I'm sleeping on the floor tonight. Clara turned. Why? Because I'm not ready. Ready for what? He met her eyes and she saw the fear there. The absolute terror of wanting something again. Ready to lose control, he admitted. Clara crossed the room, slowly stopping just in front of him. Silas, I'm not asking you to lose control. I'm asking you to share it. It's the same thing. No, it's not. She placed one hand on his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palm. But take your time. I'm not going anywhere. Silas covered her hand with his, holding it there for a moment before stepping back. "Good night, Clara." "Good night." He took his bedroll to the floor, but sleep didn't come easily for either of them. They lay awake in the darkness, both acutely aware of the other's presence, both fighting against the pull of something neither was ready to name. Outside, the Montana wilderness slept under its blanket of snow, indifferent to the quiet revolution happening inside one small cabin. Two damaged people learning slowly and painfully how to be human again. It wasn't love yet, but it was the beginning of something that might become it given time and courage and the willingness to risk pain for the chance at something real. Morning came too soon. Silas woke to the smell of fresh coffee and something else bread baking. He sat up from his bedroll on the floor, his back protesting the hard surface. Clara was already at the stove, her hair pinned up, her movements efficient. "You didn't have to get up so early," he said. "Neither did you." She poured him coffee without asking. "But we both did. That's what people do when they have work." He took the cup, their fingers brushing briefly. "About last night. We don't have to talk about it." Clara pulled the bread from the oven. "You said what you needed to say. I heard you. That's enough." But it wasn't enough, and they both knew it. The week that followed established a new rhythm between them. Silas stopped sleeping on the floor, but kept a careful distance in the bed, a wall of space separating them. Clara didn't push. She'd learned that Silas needed to come to things on his own terms, in his own time. What changed was the work. They'd become genuine partners in running the ranch, finishing each other's sentences when planning the day's tasks, moving around each other with practiced ease. The neighboring ranchers noticed. "Your wife's got a good head for cattle," Tom Brennan said one afternoon, watching Clara expertly separate a sick calf from the herd. "Most women wouldn't touch them." "Clara's not most women," Tom grinned. "That much is obvious. You're lucky, Silas." After Tom left, Clara approached Silas with fire in her eyes. "Lucky he called you lucky." It was a compliment. It was condescending. Clara stripped off her work gloves. "As if my competence is some random gift you received instead of something I earned through years of hard work." "You're reading too much into it." "Am I?" She stepped closer. "When was the last time someone called me lucky to have you? When was the last time anyone acknowledged that maybe I bring just as much value to this arrangement as you do?" Silas had no answer. "That's what I thought." Clara turned toward the cabin. "I'm making dinner. You're welcome to join me or not. Your choice." She left him standing in the yard, feeling like he'd lost an argument he didn't know he was having. That night, Silas did join her for dinner. But instead of eating in silence, he spoke. "You're right." Clara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "About what?" "About being more than lucky. About bringing value." He met her eyes. "I haven't said it because I'm not good with words. But you've made this place better. You've made it livable again. Better than Rebecca did." The question landed like a punch. "Different," Silas said carefully. "Rebecca made it a home. You're making it something I don't have a word for yet." "Try." "A partnership, like you said. Something that actually works because both people are working." Clara set down her fork. "That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me." "It's true." "Truth and niceness aren't always the same thing, Silas. But I'll take it." They smiled at each other across the table, a moment of genuine warmth passing between them. Then Clara's expression shifted. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." Silas tensed. "All right. If Rebecca had lived, if you'd never lost her, would you have been happy?" The question caught him off guard. "I don't know. Why does it matter?" "Because I need to know if you're mourning a real marriage or an idea of one." Clara leaned forward. "I need to know if the woman I'm competing with was perfect or just perfectly preserved in your memory." Silas stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. "That's not fair." "Life's not fair." Clara stood too. "But I'm living in the shadow of a ghost, Silas. I deserve to know if that ghost was real or if you've built her into something she never was. She was my wife. I loved her. That's real enough." "But was the marriage good? Or are you just remembering the good parts because grief makes everything shine brighter? Silas grabbed his coat. I'm checking the stock. It's dark outside. I don't care. He slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. Clara sat back down, her hands shaking. She'd pushed too far again. But she couldn't live like this, constantly measuring herself against a memory that had been polished to perfection by loss. An hour later, Silas returned. His face was tight, his eyes red from either cold or crying, or both. We fought, he said without preamble. Rebecca and me. We fought about money, about her wanting to visit her sister in Denver, about my drinking before I quit. We fought about having children. She wanted them right away. I wanted to wait. We fought about stupid things and important things and everything in between. Clara stayed silent, letting him speak. The last thing we said to each other before she went into labor was an argument about whether to name the baby after my father or hers. His voice cracked. I told her we'd decide after we met him. We never got the chance. Silas, you wanted truth. Here it is. My marriage wasn't perfect. Rebecca wasn't perfect. But she loved me anyway, even when I was difficult and stubborn and wrong. And I loved her. That's what I'm mourning, not perfection, but the fact that someone loved me despite my flaws. Clara crossed the room and took his cold hands in hers. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. Yes, you should have. He looked down at their joined hands. Because you're right. I've been treating her memory like something sacred when it was just human. Messy and real and human. Like us. Like us, he agreed. That night when they went to bed, the space between them seemed smaller. Not gone, but smaller. Progress measured in inches. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A wagon pulled up to the cabin just after dawn, and a well-dressed woman climbed down before Silas could stop her. Mr. Cade. She had the crisp accent of someone educated back east. I'm Eleanor Whitmore. I represent the Montana Women's Settlement Society. Clara appeared in the doorway, flower on her apron. Can we help you? Eleanor's eyes swept over Clara with open assessment. I'm here to ensure that mail-order brides in this territory are being treated properly. We've had reports of mistreatment. Who reported mistreatment? Silas's voice went dangerously quiet. I'm not at liberty to say, but the society takes these matters seriously. May I speak with Mrs. Cade privately? Clara stepped forward. You can speak to both of us, or neither of us. We're partners here. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. I see. Very well. Mrs. Cade, are you here of your own free will? I answered an advertisement and chose to come. Yes. And are you being treated fairly? Do you have access to money, to medical care if needed? Are you free to leave if you choose? Clara glanced at Silas, then back at Eleanor. I'm being treated as an equal partner in this ranch. I have more freedom here than I had in my first marriage back in Ohio, and yes, I could leave if I wanted to. I don't want to. I see. Eleanor made notes in a small book. And the sleeping arrangements? That's none of your business, Silas growled. Actually, it's precisely my business. The society has documented cases of women being forced into— I'm not being forced into anything, Clara interrupted. My husband respects my boundaries. We share a bed, but he's never pushed me beyond what I'm comfortable with. Eleanor studied Clara's face for a long moment. You seem sincere. I am sincere. Now, if you're satisfied, we have work to do. Of course. Eleanor closed her book. I apologize for the intrusion, but you understand we must verify these situations. Too many women have no voice. I have a voice, Clara said firmly, and I'm using it to tell you I'm fine. After Eleanor left, Clara turned to Silas with fury in her eyes. Who reported us? Probably Tom Brennan's wife. She never approved of mail-order marriages. Thinks they're improper. Improper. Clara laughed bitterly, as if arranged marriages among society families are any different. At least we're honest about what this is. What is it, Clara? Silas asked quietly. What is this? She met his eyes, and the air between them crackled with tension. I don't know yet, but it's ours. No one else gets to define it. Agreed. The incident with Eleanor Whitmore changed something between them. That evening, as they worked side by side preparing dinner, Silas spoke without looking at her. I told her we share a bed. We do share a bed. But not the way she assumed. He set down the knife he'd been using. And I realized I don't want her assumption to be wrong forever. Clara's hands stilled in the dishwater. What are you saying? I'm saying the space between us is getting smaller, and I'm not sure I want it to exist anymore. Silas, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. That's the point. He turned to face her. For the first time since Rebecca died, I want something. I want you. Not because you're convenient or useful or here, because you're you. Clara's breath caught. You barely know me. I know you're strong. I know you don't take my silence for granted. I know you push me when I need pushing and give me space when I need space. I know you make this cabin feel alive again. He stepped closer. That's enough to want more. Wanting and loving are different things. I know. I'm not promising love, Clara. I'm promising want. Is that enough for now? She studied his face, seeing the vulnerability there, the risk he was taking. Yes, it's enough. He kissed her, then tentative and careful, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. We should finish dinner. Clara said, her voice unsteady. Dinner can wait. No. She stepped back, smoothing her hair. We need to do this right, slow. Not because we're desperate or lonely, but because we choose it. Silas nodded, respecting her wisdom, even as his body protested. You're right. They finished preparing the meal in charged silence. Every accidental touch electric. Every glance loaded with promise. That night, when they went to bed, Silas pulled Clara against him, her back to his chest, his arm around her waist. This all right? He murmured into her hair. Yes. She laced her fingers through his. This is perfect. They slept that way, two people learning to trust touch again after years of pain. The next few weeks brought a cold snap that tested everything. The temperature dropped so low that water froze in the well, and the cattle huddled together for warmth. Silas and Clara worked brutal hours trying to keep the animals alive, hauling water, distributing extra feed, checking for frostbite. One morning, Clara didn't wake when Silas got up. He touched her forehead and swore. She was burning with fever. Clara. He shook her gently. Clara, wake up. Her eyes opened glassy and unfocused. I'm fine. Just need a minute. You're sick. Stay in bed. The cattle. I'll handle the cattle. You rest. But Clara tried to sit up anyway, and the room spun around her. She fell back against the pillow, too weak to protest. Silas worked like a demon that day, doing the work of two people racing against time and temperature. When he finally returned to the cabin hours later, Clara was worse. She'd thrown off the blankets and was shaking with chills, mumbling incoherently. No. He grabbed his coat again. No, you don't get to do this. He rode through the freezing night to fetch Doc Morrison, an old man who'd seen his share of Montana winters. The doctor examined Clara while Silas paced. Pneumonia, Doc Morrison said finally. She's strong, but this weather's dangerous. She needs constant care fluids, warmth monitoring. You prepared for that? I'll do whatever it takes. Then you'd better settle in. Next few days will tell us everything. Silas didn't leave Clara's side for 3 days. He spooned broth into her mouth when she was lucid enough to swallow, bathed her face with cool cloths, when the fever raged, held her when the chills came. He talked to her even when she couldn't respond, telling her about the ranch, about the cattle, about everything and nothing. You don't get to leave, he said on the third night, exhaustion making him raw. You don't get to come into my life, make me want things again, and then leave. That's not how this works. Clara's eyes fluttered open, more focused than they'd been. Silas, I'm here. He gripped her hand. I'm right here. The ranch is fine. Everything's fine. You just need to get better. I'm trying. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm so tired. I know. But you're strong, Clara. Stronger than anyone I've ever met. You can fight this. What if I can't? Then I'll fight it for you. He brought her hand to his lips. I'll fight anything for you. She smiled weakly. That might be the most romantic thing you've ever said. Don't get used to it. I'm not good at romance. You're doing fine. Her eyes drifted closed again. Just fine. On the fourth day, the fever broke. Clara woke clear-eyed and weak but alive. Silas, who dozed off in the chair beside the bed, jerked awake when she spoke. You look terrible. He laughed, the sound cracking with relief. You look beautiful. Liar. But she smiled. How long was I sick? 4 days. Doc Morrison said it was touch and go. But I made it. You made it. He moved to the bed, sitting beside her. Clara, I need to tell you something. If this is about the ranch, it can wait. It's not about the ranch. He took her hand, holding it between both of his. When you were sick, when I thought I might lose you, I realized something. I've been lying to myself. To you. To everyone. About what? About not being able to love again. About that part of me being dead. His voice roughened with emotion. It's not dead. It's just been sleeping. And you woke it up. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Silas, I'm not saying I'm there yet. I'm not saying I'm ready to give you everything. But I'm saying I want to try. I want to build something real with you. Not because you're convenient or because you answered an ad, but because you're you. Because you make me want to be better. That's all I've ever wanted, Clara whispered. A chance. A real chance. Then you've got it. He kissed her forehead gently. We've got it. Clara pulled him down beside her, and they lay together in the narrow bed. Two broken people learning that maybe, just maybe, broken pieces could fit together and make something whole. When Clara was strong enough to sit up, Silas brought her something he'd been hiding. A small wooden box worn smooth with age. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside was a delicate gold locket. Clara lifted it carefully, her fingers trembling. This is beautiful. It was Rebecca's. Her mother gave it to her when we married. Silas watched Clara's face carefully. I want you to have it. Silas, I can't. You can. Rebecca would have wanted it to go to someone who understood what it meant to fight for a life here. Someone strong enough to survive Montana. He paused. Someone I care about. Clara opened the locket. Inside were two tiny portraits, a young Rebecca and a baby. She looked up at Silas with understanding. These are them. That's them. I had the portraits done after they died. Needed something to remember them by. He touched the locket gently. But I don't need it anymore. I remember them in here. He tapped his chest. Carrying this around, keeping it locked away, that was just another way of staying stuck. Are you sure? I'm sure. He closed her fingers around the locket. You're my future, Clara. Not my consolation prize. My future. And I want you to have this because it represents letting go of the past and choosing what comes next. Clara pressed the locket to her heart, then set it aside and pulled Silas into a fierce embrace. Thank you for trusting me with this, with all of it. They held each other in the quiet cabin while the Montana winter raged outside, two people who'd started as strangers, learning that sometimes the most unexpected paths led exactly where you needed to go. By the time spring touched the Montana Valley, Clara had transformed more than just the cabin. She'd begun transforming Silas himself, though he fought it every step of the way. You're doing it again, Clara said one morning as they worked together repairing winter damage to the barn. Doing what? Pulling back. Every time we get close, you find a reason to retreat. Silas hammered a board into place with more force than necessary. I'm standing right here. Physically, yes. But you're somewhere else entirely. Clara set down her tools. What happened? Last week you gave me Rebecca's locket. Yesterday you barely spoke to me. What changed? Nothing changed. Everything changed, and you're terrified. She stepped in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. Talk to me. There's nothing to talk about. Silas Cade, you are the most stubborn, infuriating man I've ever met. But you're also capable of honesty when you're brave enough to use it, so be brave. He threw down his hammer. Fine. You want honesty? I'm scared, Clara. I'm scared because every morning I wake up and want you more than the day before. I'm scared because I'm starting to need you, and needing people gets them killed. It got Rebecca killed. It got my son killed. It'll get you killed too. That's not how it works. Isn't it? His voice rose. Rebecca needed me to provide for her to build a safe home. I did that. And she died anyway. My son needed me to protect him to give him a chance at life. I failed. What makes you think I won't fail you too? Clara grabbed his face between her hands, forcing him to look at her. Because I don't need you to save me, Silas. I need you to stand beside me. There's a difference. What if standing beside you isn't enough? Then we'll figure it out together. That's what partners do. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I don't know how to do this without being afraid. Then be afraid. But don't let fear make you cruel. She pulled back enough to see his face. Don't push me away because you're scared of losing me. That's just another way of losing me, and you'll have done it yourself. The truth of her words hit him hard. You're right. I usually am. She smiled, easing the tension. Now finish fixing this barn before it falls on our heads. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, but Clara's mind was racing. Silas's fear made sense, but it also revealed something crucial. He cared about her. Really cared. And that changed everything. 2 days later, a stranger rode up to the ranch. He was well-dressed, carrying himself with the confidence of someone used to getting his way. Silas tensed immediately. "Can I help you?" he called out. The man dismounted, his smile too wide, too practiced. "I'm looking for Clara Johnson. I was told she might be here." Clara appeared in the doorway, her face going white. "Thomas." Silas's hand moved toward his rifle. "Who's Thomas?" "My first husband." Clara's voice was flat, emotionless. "The one who's supposed to be dead." Thomas laughed. "Rumors of my death were greatly exaggerated, darling, though I appreciate the sentiment. What are you doing here?" Clara descended the porch steps, her body rigid with tension. "How did you find me?" "Wasn't hard. Small community, mail-order bridewoman matching your description. I put the pieces together." Thomas's eyes swept over the ranch appraisingly. "Nice place. Quite an upgrade from our little house in Ohio." "That wasn't our house. It was your prison for me." Clara stopped several feet away from him. "You still haven't answered my question. What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, my wife back." Silas stepped forward. "She's my wife now." Thomas's smile didn't waver. "Actually, she's not. You can't marry someone who's already married, which means your little arrangement here is illegal. Bigamy's a serious crime in Montana territory." Clara's world tilted. "You signed the divorce papers. I saw you sign them." "I signed a piece of paper, yes, but I never filed it." Thomas pulled a document from his coat. "According to the state of Ohio, we're still legally married, which makes this gentleman here nothing more than the man you're committing adultery with." "You bastard!" Silas moved toward Thomas, but Clara's hand on his arm stopped him. "Don't. That's what he wants, a reason to cause trouble." She turned back to Thomas. Why go through the charade of signing papers if you never intended to file them?" "Because I knew you'd leave anyway. This way I knew where you'd end up." Thomas pocketed the document. "I've been sober for 6 months, Clara. I've changed. I want another chance." No, you don't mean that. I absolutely mean that. Clara's voice hardened. You had years of chances, Thomas. You drank them all away along with every penny we had, every ounce of my dignity, and every bit of love I ever felt for you. People change. Some people change. You just got better at lying. Clara crossed her arms. Leave, now. Thomas's pleasant facade cracked. You think you can just dismiss me? I'm your husband, Clara. Legal and binding. You belong to me. I belong to myself. Clara stood her ground. I don't care what some piece of paper says. I'm not going anywhere with you. Then I'll file charges against your friend here for alienation of affection, for kidnapping, for— Do it! Clara's voice was ice. File whatever charges you want. I'll stand in court and tell them exactly what kind of husband you were. I'll tell them about the bruises on my arms from when you grabbed me, about the nights you spent our food money on whiskey, about the time you threw a bottle at my head and missed by inches. Thomas's face flushed. You're exaggerating. Am I, because I still have a scar on my shoulder where the glass cut me? Want me to show the judge? Clara, get off my property. Silas's voice was deadly quiet. And if you come back, I won't be this restrained. Thomas looked between them, calculating his options. Finally, he mounted his horse. This isn't over. I'll be back with the sheriff. He rode off, leaving Clara shaking with suppressed rage and fear. Is it true? Silas asked quietly. Are you still legally married to him? I don't know. Maybe. He signed the papers in front of a witness, but if he never filed them— Clara wrapped her arms around herself. Oh God, Silas, what if our marriage isn't real? It's real to me. But legally? I don't care about legally right now. I care about you. He pulled her into his arms. We'll figure this out. We'll find a lawyer, we'll fight this. But Clara, you need to tell me everything. No more secrets. She nodded against his chest. He was good at first. Charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. But after we married, it changed. The drinking got worse. The anger got worse. He never hit me with a closed fist, but he found other ways to hurt me. Why didn't you leave sooner? Where would I go? My family was dead. I had no money, no prospects. Women don't just leave their husbands, Silas. Society doesn't allow it, even when those husbands are killing them slowly. Silas held her tighter. He's not taking you back. I don't care what any paper says. He might not give us a choice. There's always a choice, and I choose you. That night they sat at the table trying to make sense of their options. Clara had kept copies of the divorce papers, but without proof they'd been filed, they were just paper. We could go to Ohio, Silas suggested. File them ourselves, make sure it's legal. That would take months. And what if Thomas fights it? What if he refuses? Then we fight back. But Clara, we can't just ignore this. If he goes to the sheriff— A knock on the door interrupted them. Silas grabbed his rifle before answering. Sheriff Cole stood on the porch looking uncomfortable. Evening, Silas. Mrs. Cade. He nodded to Clara. Mind if I come in? That depends. You here on official business? In a manner of speaking. The sheriff entered, removing his hat. Had a visit from a Thomas Johnson this afternoon. He made some serious accusations. Clara stood. Whatever he said. I know Thomas Johnson's type, ma'am. I've been sheriff long enough to recognize a man looking for leverage. Cole sat down heavily. But I also have to investigate when someone claims a crime's been committed. What exactly is he claiming? Silas asked. That you married his wife while she was still legally married to him. That you kidnapped her from Ohio. That you're holding her against her will. The sheriff held up a hand. Now I can see plain as day that last part's hogwash. But the first part, Mrs. Cade, are you divorced from Thomas Johnson? Clara showed him the signed papers. He signed these in front of a witness. I believed we were divorced. Believed isn't the same as were. Cole examined the papers. These were never filed with the county clerk in Ohio. Without that filing, they're not valid. So, what does that mean? Silas's jaw was tight. Means technically Mrs. Cade is still married to Thomas Johnson, which means your marriage here isn't legal. Cole looked pained. I'm sorry, folks, but that's the law. The law is wrong, Clara said fiercely. That man destroyed me piece by piece for 5 years. The only reason I'm alive is because I escaped. And now you're telling me I'm still bound to him. I'm telling you what the law says, ma'am. What you do about it is up to you. Cole stood. But I'd suggest you get a lawyer, and soon, because Thomas Johnson is threatening to press charges, and I can't ignore that indefinitely. After the sheriff left, Clara paced the cabin like a caged animal. This can't be happening. I did everything right. I got the signatures I left, I started over. How is he still controlling my life? He's not controlling anything. Silas caught her mid-pace. Listen to me. Papers don't define what we have. Love defines it. Commitment defines it. And I'm committed to you, Clara, legal or not. But if they arrest you, they won't arrest me. Worst case, they annul our marriage and we live together without the paper. Best case, we find a way to make your divorce legal and we remarry. Either way, you're not going back to him. Clara searched his face. You'd risk jail for me. I'd risk anything for you. Haven't you figured that out yet? She kissed him then, desperate and fierce, pouring all her fear and gratitude into it. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. We fight, Clara said. Together. Together. The next morning brought another visitor, but this one was expected. Silas had sent for a lawyer from Helena, a sharp woman named Margaret Hayes, who specialized in what she called impossible cases. Let me understand this correctly, Margaret said after hearing their story. Your first husband signed divorce papers, but never filed them, then tracked you across state lines to reclaim you after you'd remarried. That's correct. Margaret's eyes gleamed. That's not just abandonment, that's entrapment. He deliberately deceived you about the divorce to maintain control. Any judge worth his salt will see that. But is our marriage valid? Silas asked. In Montana, no. But that can be fixed quickly once we secure a real divorce from Mr. Johnson. Margaret pulled out papers. The bigger issue is his threats. He's trying to intimidate you into submission. We need to flip that script. How? Clara leaned forward. We file for divorce in Montana on grounds of abandonment and deception. We document his abuse. And we sue him for fraud. Margaret smiled grimly. He wants to play legal games. Let's show him what real legal pressure looks like. Over the next week, Margaret built their case with ruthless efficiency. She interviewed neighbors from Ohio who'd witnessed Thomas's drinking. She documented Clara's scar. She found the witness who'd watched Thomas sign the divorce papers, a man who swore Thomas had promised to file them immediately. Thomas tried to fight back. He showed up at the ranch twice more, each time more desperate. The second time Silas met him at the property line with a rifle. Last warning, Johnson. You come on my land again, I'll treat you like any other predator. That's my wife. That's my partner, the woman I love. And you don't get her back just because you finally realized what you lost. Silas raised the rifle slightly. Go back to Ohio. Sign whatever Margaret Hayes puts in front of you. Or we'll drag every ugly detail of your marriage through public court and you'll lose anyway just with your reputation destroyed. Thomas looked at Clara, who stood on the porch. You really choose him over me. I choose myself over you, Clara called back. Silas is just the bonus that came with freedom. Thomas rode away, but his parting words chilled them both. This isn't over. 3 days later, the ranch caught fire. Silas smelled smoke before he saw flames. He burst out of the barn to find the hay, storage ablaze, fire racing toward the cabin. Clara! He ran toward the house, his heart in his throat. She appeared in the doorway, already grabbing buckets. The well go. They fought the fire together, hauling water, beating back flames with wet blankets, desperately trying to save what they'd built. Neighbors arrived, drawn by the smoke, and together they contained the blaze before it reached the cabin. But the hay storage was destroyed. A full winter's supply of feed gone. How did this start? Tom Brennan asked, examining the remains. Silas found the answer in the ashes, a broken oil lamp that hadn't been there that morning. Someone had set the fire deliberately. "Thomas," Clara breathed. "Can you prove it?" Sheriff Cole had arrived with the crowd. "Who else would do this?" Silas gestured at the destruction. "He threatened us 3 days ago. Now our barn's burning. That's not coincidence." "It's also not proof." Cole looked troubled. "But I'll talk to him, see if he's got an alibi." Thomas did have an alibi, or claimed to. He'd been at the saloon in town all afternoon with multiple witnesses. But Clara knew the truth. Thomas was smart enough to have someone else light the match. That night, as they surveyed the damage by moonlight, Clara made a decision. "I'm done running," she said quietly. "I'm done letting him control my life through fear." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we end this. Tomorrow we go to Helena with Margaret. We file everything, divorce fraud charges, a restraining order. We make it so legally binding that even Thomas can't wiggle out of it. And if he retaliates again, then we deal with it, together." Clara took Silas's hand. "But I won't live in fear anymore. I won't let him take what we've built. It's dangerous. Living is dangerous." She squeezed his hand. "But living afraid is worse than not living at all." Silas pulled her close, marveling at her courage. "How did I get so lucky? You answered an ad. I answered back. Everything else is just stubbornness and faith. And love." Clara looked up at him, her eyes bright. "And love. Definitely love." They kissed there among the ashes of what they'd lost, already planning what they'd build in its place. Because that's what survivors did. They rebuilt. Stronger, smarter together. The next morning, they rode to Helena with Margaret Hayes. The legal proceedings took 3 days of testimony documentation and strategic maneuvering. Thomas tried to fight, but Margaret had built an airtight case. His fraud was undeniable. His deception was documented. His threats were witnessed. The judge, a stern woman named Alice Morrison, listened to everything with sharp attention. When it was Clara's turn to testify, she told her story without flinching. Every detail, every hurt, every moment of fear. "Mrs. Johnson," Judge Morrison said when she finished, "why didn't you seek legal help sooner?" "Because I believed my divorce was real, Your Honor. Because I trusted my husband when he signed those papers. Because I was trying to build a new life, and you can't build anything while constantly looking over your shoulder. And now I'm here fighting for my freedom, for my real marriage, for the life I deserve." Judge Morrison nodded slowly. "Mr. Johnson, your actions constitute fraud, abandonment, and what I'd call emotional terrorism. Your marriage to Mrs. Johnson is hereby dissolved retroactive to the date of the signed papers. You are ordered to pay court costs and damages, and you are permanently prohibited from contacting Mrs. Johnson or entering Cascade County. Violate that order and you'll face criminal charges." Thomas stood, fury radiating from him. "This is final," the judge interrupted. "Get out of my courtroom, Mr. Johnson, and count yourself lucky I'm not charging you with arson." He left his defeat absolute. Clara sagged in her chair, the weight of years lifting all at once. "Is it really over?" "It's really over," Margaret confirmed. "You're free. Legally, completely free." Silas pulled Clara into his arms, and she finally let herself cry, not from sadness, but from relief, so profound it felt like resurrection. That night in their Helena hotel room, Silas held Clara as she processed everything. "We need to remarry," he said softly. "Make it legal and real." "It was always real." "I know, but I want it legal too. I want the whole world to know you're mine and I'm yours." Clara smiled through her tears. "Are you proposing Silas Cade?" "I'm stating facts." But his eyes were warm. "Clara Johnson, or whatever name you want to use now, will you marry me again? For real this time?" "Yes, absolutely yes." They married 3 days later in a small Helena church with Margaret Hayes as their witness. No pretense, no cold arrangements, just two people choosing each other freely, completely, without reservation. When Silas kissed his bride, it felt like the first time and the 1,000th time all at once, familiar and new, safe and thrilling. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I should have said it sooner, but I'm saying it now. I love you, Clara. I love you too." She pulled him closer. "Now take me home." They rode back to the ranch as husband and wife, for real this time, ready to rebuild everything they'd lost and create everything they'd dreamed of, together. The ride back to the ranch felt different. Clara wasn't just returning to a place, she was returning home with a man who was truly her husband. Legal, chosen, real. "What are you smiling about?" Silas asked, glancing at her. "Everything. Nothing. Us." Clara leaned against his shoulder. "I'm just happy." "Happy looks good on you." "It feels good too." But happiness didn't erase reality. When they crested the final hill and saw the ranch, the burned hay storage stood as a stark reminder of what they'd lost. Rebuilding wouldn't be cheap or easy. "We'll need to buy feed to replace what burned," Clara said, her practical mind already calculating. "That'll drain most of our savings." "We'll manage. We always do." "Silas, we need to talk about money." Clara straightened. "Real talk, not assumptions. How bad is it?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Bad enough. The fire cost us 6 months of winter preparation. We've got enough to survive, but not enough to thrive. One more disaster, and we're finished." "Then we make sure there are no more disasters." Clara's jaw set with determination. "We rebuild smarter. We diversify. We don't put all our resources in one place." "You've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about everything." She turned to face him. "This ranch is ours now, both of us, which means I get a say in how we run it." "You've always had a say." "No, I've had permission to help. That's different from partnership." Clara held his gaze. "I want real partnership, Silas. Equal decisions, equal risks, equal rewards." "What are you proposing?" "I'm proposing we stop running this place like it's 1850 and start running it like it's 1875. We sell some cattle and buy chickens. We plant a cash crop along with food crops. We offer boarding for travelers. This valley's growing people need places to stay. We make this ranch more than just survival. We make it profitable." Silas stared at her. "You've really thought this through. I had 3 days in Helena with nothing to do but think." Clara smiled. "So what do you say, partners for real?" He pulled her into a kiss that answered without words. When they broke apart, both were grinning. "Partners," he confirmed. "For real." They started implementing Clara's plans immediately. The first step was the hardest, selling off a quarter of their cattle herd to raise capital. Silas hated watching them go, but Clara was right. They needed flexibility, not just livestock. With the money they bought lumber to rebuild the storage chickens for a proper coop and seeds for Clara's cash crop idea. She wanted to grow potatoes hardy, profitable, in demand. "Potatoes!" Tom Brennan laughed when he heard. "That's woman's garden work, not ranching." "That's income during months when cattle don't sell," Clara shot back. "And last I checked, money doesn't care whether it came from cows or crops." Tom's smile faded. "You're serious?" "Completely serious. We've got good soil near the creek. Why waste it?" Within a week, Clara had transformed a full acre into plowed rows ready for planting. Silas worked beside her, learning as they went. The neighboring ranchers watched with skepticism that bordered on mockery. "They think we're crazy," Silas said one evening, his muscles aching from unfamiliar work. "Let them think what they want. We'll see who's laughing come harvest." But doubt crept in during the long nights. What if Clara was wrong? What if they'd gambled their security on a crop that failed? Silas didn't voice these fears, but Clara saw them anyway. "You're worried," she said one night as they lay in bed. "I'm cautious." "You're terrified we've made a mistake." Clara turned to face him. But Silas staying safe wasn't working. We were barely surviving. Sometimes you have to risk everything to gain anything. What if we lose? Then we lose together, and we start over, together. She took his hand. "But we won't lose." I know this land. I know what it can do. Trust me. I do trust you. That's what scares me. Why does trust scare you? Because everyone I've trusted has left. My parents died. Rebecca died. You're the first person I've let matter since then, and if something happens to you, nothing's going to happen to me. Clara squeezed his hand. I'm not fragile, Silas. I'm not going to break because you love me. You don't know that. Neither do you. So we can spend our lives afraid of what might happen, or we can live right now. Your choice. He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. I choose now. Good answer. The next challenge came from an unexpected source. Eleanor Whitmore returned this time with 3 other women from the Settlement Society. Mrs. Cade, we'd like to speak with you. Eleanor said, her tone formal. Clara wiped her hands on her apron. About what? About your testimony in Helena. Word has spread about your case about Mr. Johnson's fraud. There are other women in this territory trapped in similar situations. We'd like your help reaching them. My help how? We want you to speak publicly about what you endured, to show other women they can fight back. Eleanor's eyes were intense. You won. You actually won against a system designed to keep women powerless. That matters. Silas stepped forward. Clara's been through enough. She doesn't need to relive her trauma for strangers. It's not for strangers. Eleanor turned to him. It's for women who are living right now what your wife escaped. Women who think they're trapped forever because the law says they are. Clara felt the weight of the request. If I do this, Thomas might come back. He might retaliate. The judge's order prohibits contact. If he violates it, he goes to prison. Eleanor softened slightly. I know what I'm asking isn't easy. But Mrs. Cade, you have power now. Real power. You can use it to help others or keep it to yourself. Both choices are valid, but only one changes things. Clara looked at Silas, seeing his protective instinct warring with respect for her autonomy. What do you think? I think it's your decision, your story, your choice whether to share it. But what do you want me to do? I want you safe, but I also know safety isn't the same as living. He touched her face gently. Whatever you choose, I'm with you. Clara turned back to Eleanor. I'll do it, but on my terms. I'll speak to small groups, not crowds. And I won't give details that exploit my pain for entertainment. This is about empowerment, not sensationalism. Agreed, Eleanor smiled. Thank you, Mrs. Cade. You have no idea how many lives you're about to change. After they left, Silas pulled Clara aside. Are you sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She straightened her shoulders. I survived, Thomas. I survived poverty and fear and a system that tried to keep me powerless. If sharing that helps even one woman escape, it's worth it. You're braver than anyone I've ever known. I'm terrified, but I'm doing it anyway. That's what bravery is. The first speaking engagement happened a week later in a small church gathering. 20 women attended, their faces ranging from curious to desperate. Clara stood before them, her hands shaking, her voice uncertain at first. I'm not here to tell you what to do, she began. I'm here to tell you what I did, and to tell you that you're not alone. She shared her story. The abuse, the fake divorce, the fear, the fight. She watched faces change as women recognized their own experiences in her words. When she finished, the room was silent. Then an older woman in the back stood up. How did you find the courage to leave? I didn't find it. I manufactured it out of desperation. Clara met her eyes. I realized one day that staying would kill me, maybe not right away, but eventually. And I decided I'd rather risk dying trying to escape than guarantee dying by staying. Another woman spoke up. But where did you go? How did you survive? I answered an advertisement for a mail-order bride. It wasn't romantic or ideal, but it was honest. The man who placed that ad told me exactly what he expected: work in exchange for security. No pretty lies. Just truth. And now, Clara smiled. Now he's my husband. For real. And we're partners in every sense of the word. The questions continued for an hour. Women shared their own stories of abuse, entrapment, fear. Clara listened, offered what advice she could, and mostly just bore witness to their pain. Afterward, 3 women approached her privately. They were ready to leave their situations and needed help. Clara connected them with Margaret Hayes and the Settlement Society's resources. "You did good today," Silas said on the ride home. "I feel like I barely did anything. You gave them hope. That's everything." But not everyone appreciated Clara's new role. 2 days later, Silas found a threatening note nailed to their barn door. "Mind your own business or pay the price. Wives should obey, not rebel." Clara read it with more anger than fear. Whoever wrote this is exactly why this work matters. "Clara, this is dangerous. Someone's watching us, threatening us. They're trying to scare us into silence. I won't be silenced. Even if it puts us at risk, especially then." Clara crumpled the note. "Fear is how they win, Silas. I spent 5 years being afraid. I'm done." But Silas wasn't done being afraid for her. He started sleeping lighter, keeping his rifle closer, watching the roads for unfamiliar riders. Clara noticed but didn't comment. She understood his protectiveness, even if she didn't need it. The potato crop came in stronger than anyone expected. Clara's gamble paid off spectacularly. They harvested enough to sell at a significant profit and still keep plenty for their own use. The neighboring ranchers who'd mocked them suddenly wanted advice. "How'd you know?" Tom Brennan asked, examining the yield with grudging respect. "I didn't know. I hoped and worked and prayed." Clara wiped sweat from her forehead. "Same as everyone else. I just wasn't afraid to try something different." "You're making the rest of us look bad," Tom joked, but there was truth in it. "Then try harder." Clara smiled to soften the challenge. "This valley's big enough for all of us to succeed." The success brought attention, both good and bad. Good attention came in the form of other ranchers asking Clara for agricultural advice, which she gave freely. Bad attention came from men who resented a woman's success. One afternoon, a group of 3 men rode onto the property uninvited. Silas was in town, leaving Clara alone. "Can I help you?" she called from the porch, her hand on the rifle she'd started keeping close. "Heard you're the woman who tells wives to disobey their husbands," the leader said. He was large, mean-looking, chewing tobacco. "I tell women they have rights. If that sounds like disobedience to you, maybe you should examine your marriage." "Mouthy for someone who's alone." Clara raised the rifle smoothly. "I'm never alone when I'm armed. State your business or leave my property." "We're here to deliver a message. Stop poisoning women's minds with your independence talk. It's destroying families." "No. What's destroying families is men who think ownership equals marriage." Clara's finger moved to the trigger. "Now get off my land before I put holes in you." The men exchanged glances, clearly not expecting resistance. The leader spat tobacco juice. "Your husband know you're this difficult." "My husband knows I can defend myself. Now move." They left, but slowly, making sure she understood they weren't really afraid. Clara watched until they disappeared. Then her hands started shaking so badly she had to set down the rifle. When Silas returned and she told him what happened, his face went white with fury. "You could have been killed." "But I wasn't. I handled it." "You shouldn't have to handle it." He paced the cabin like a trapped animal. "Clara, this has to stop. The speaking, the activism, it's putting a target on your back." "So what, I should shut up and hide because men with fragile egos can't handle women having voices? I'm saying I can't lose you." The words burst out of him raw and desperate. "I can't watch you put yourself in danger for strangers while I stand by helpless." "Then don't be helpless. Stand beside me. Support me. Trust me." Clara grabbed his arms, forcing him to stop pacing. "Silas, I love you, but I won't shrink myself to make you feel safer. That's not partnership. That's just another kind of cage." He pulled away, his emotions too big for the small cabin. "I need air." He left and Clara let him go. Some battles had to be fought alone. Silas walked for hours, wrestling with his fear and his pride. He knew Clara was right. He knew her work mattered. But knowledge didn't erase the terror of losing her. When he finally returned, Clara was sitting at the table, her hands wrapped around cold coffee. "I'm sorry," they said simultaneously. Silas sat across from her. "You first. I'm sorry for dismissing your fear. It's real and valid. You've lost people you love and now you're watching me do dangerous things. That's not fair to you." "But you're not going to stop," he said quietly. "No, I'm not. This work matters too much." Clara reached across the table. "But I'll be smarter, more careful. I'll take precautions. And I'll listen when you're worried instead of just pushing through. And I'll support you instead of trying to cage you." Silas took her hand. "Even when it scares me. Especially when it scares me." "Deal." They sealed the agreement with a kiss that tasted like compromise and trust, and the hard work of loving someone without trying to control them. The next speaking engagement, Silas went with her. He stood at the back of the room, his presence a silent promise of protection. Clara spoke with more confidence, knowing he was there supporting her, even through his fear. Afterward, a young woman approached them both. She was bruised, her eye nearly swollen shut. "My husband did this 2 days ago," she said quietly. "I need help leaving, but I have nowhere to go." Clara looked at Silas. He nodded. "You can stay with us," Clara said, "until we find you something permanent." The woman, her name was Sarah, stayed in their cabin for 3 weeks, while Margaret Hayes worked on her legal case. Clara taught her to shoot to plant, to defend herself. Silas taught her to repair fences and care for animals. They gave her skills that would translate to independence. When Sarah finally left with a legal separation and a new job lined up in Helena, she hugged them both fiercely. "You saved my life." "You saved your own life," Clara corrected. "We just gave you a place to stand while you did it." After Sarah left, Clara and Silas stood together looking at their ranch. The rebuilt storage, the thriving potato field, the chicken coop producing eggs, the cattle grazing peacefully, the cabin that had transformed from a tomb to a home. "We did this," Clara said softly. "Together." "We did." Silas pulled her close. "And we're not done yet." "No. No, I want more. A bigger garden. Maybe some pigs. Definitely that boarding house idea you mentioned." He kissed her temple. "I want to build an empire with you, Clara Cade." "An empire sounds exhausting." "Then a kingdom. A duchy. Whatever you want to call it. The point is, I want to build something that lasts. Something that matters. With you." Clara turned in his arms, her eyes bright. "I want that too." "Then let's do it. Let's make this ranch the kind of place people talk about. The kind of place that proves partnership works better than ownership." "That's ambitious." "You make me ambitious." He kissed her properly. "You make me want to be more than I was." "You were always enough, Silas. You just couldn't see it." "I can see it now. Because you showed me." They stood there as the sun set, two people who'd started as strangers, bound by necessity, who'd become partners through choice, and who'd found love in the space between fear and courage. The ranch they were building wasn't just property. It was proof that broken people could heal, that practical arrangements could become passionate partnerships, that mail-order marriages could transform into love stories worth telling. But building empires required more than ambition. 3 months after Sarah left, Clara stood in the chicken coop feeling dizzy. She gripped the fence post until the world stopped spinning. "You all right?" Silas appeared beside her, concern etched on his face. "Fine. Just stood up too fast. That's the 3rd time this week you've nearly fainted." "I'm fine, Silas. Stop hovering." But she wasn't fine, and they both knew it. That evening, Clara finally admitted what she'd been suspecting for weeks. "I think I'm pregnant." Silas dropped the coffee cup he'd been holding. It shattered on the floor, neither of them moving to clean it up. "You think or you know. I'm 2 months late. I'm sick every morning. I'm exhausted by noon." Clara's voice shook. "I know." Silas sank into a chair, his face draining of color. "Rebecca died in childbirth." "I know." Our son died. I know that too. Clara knelt in front of him, taking his hands. But I'm not Rebecca. This isn't then. We have choices now. Better medical care, more knowledge. None of that saved them. And none of that guarantees I'll die. Clara squeezed his hands. Silas, I'm scared too. But we can't let fear steal this from us. What if I lose you? What if you don't? What if everything goes perfectly, and we have a healthy baby, and I survive, and we build the family we both want? She touched his face. We can't live our whole lives preparing for the worst. Sometimes we have to hope for the best. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I can't lose you, Clara. I can't. Then help me stay safe. Get me the best doctor. Make sure I rest. Be my partner through this like you've been my partner through everything else. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. So we'll figure it out together. Doc Morrison confirmed the pregnancy the next day. He examined Clara thoroughly, his expression serious. You're healthy, Mrs. Cade. Strong. I don't see any reason this pregnancy can't go well. But Clara heard the hesitation. But childbirth is always risky, especially out here where we don't have access to city hospitals. He looked between them. I'd recommend you consider going to Helena for the birth. They have better facilities, trained nurses, modern equipment. No. Silas's voice was firm. If something goes wrong, I want to be there. I'm not letting her go through this alone. Then we prepare for every possibility. Doc Morrison pulled out papers. These are instructions for emergency situations, signs to watch for, what to do if labor starts too early or goes too long. I'll check on you weekly as you get closer to your due date. After he left, Clara and Silas sat in stunned silence. A baby? Clara finally said. We're having a baby. Are you happy? Silas asked quietly. Terrified, thrilled, overwhelmed, all of it. She took his hand, placing it on her still flat stomach. But yes, I'm happy. Are you? I don't know yet. Ask me again when you're both safe on the other side. Silas. I know. I'm working on it. He kissed her forehead. I'll get there. Just give me time. Time moved differently after that. The days crawled when Clara felt sick and exhausted. They flew when she felt good and worked alongside Silas on the ranch. Her body changed gradually, her belly growing round, her energy waning. The community reacted with mixed feelings. Some women were thrilled, offering advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Others whispered that Clara was too old for a first baby, too independent, too unwomanly to mother properly. Ignore them, Eleanor Whitmore said during one of her visits. Women who tear down other women are just repeating what men taught them. You're going to be a wonderful mother. What if I'm not? What if I'm too hard, too practical, too strong, too smart, too capable? Eleanor smiled. Those are exactly the qualities children need in a mother. The soft ones are nice, but the strong ones keep them alive. Clara's speaking engagements continued through her pregnancy, though she modified them as her body changed. She spoke sitting down. She kept them shorter, but she didn't stop. You should rest, Silas said after one particularly draining session. I'll rest when I'm dead. That's not funny. It wasn't a joke. Silas, this work matters. Women need to hear that pregnancy doesn't make them property, that motherhood doesn't erase their autonomy. I know. I just worry. Worry quieter. But she smiled to soften it. I love that you care. I just need you to trust me too. The first real scare came in her 6th month. Clara woke to cramping so severe she couldn't stand. Silas rode for Doc Morrison, while Clara gripped the bed frame and prayed. False labor, the doctor said after examining her. Painful, but not dangerous. Your body's practicing for the real thing. It felt real enough, Clara said through gritted teeth. It'll happen again, maybe several times. Best thing you can do is rest when it hits and breathe through it. After that, Silas became obsessively protective. He wouldn't let Clara lift anything heavy. He insisted she nap every afternoon. He hovered so constantly that Clara finally snapped. "I'm pregnant, not dying." "I know that." "Then stop treating me like I'm made of glass. I'm still me, Silas. Still capable. Still strong." "I'm trying to keep you safe. You're trying to control your fear by controlling me. That's different." Clara stood, her belly prominent now. "I need you to be my husband, not my jailer." "That's not fair." "Neither is suffocating me with protection I didn't ask for." She softened slightly. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we have to live through this fear, not hide from it." "I'm doing my best." "Then do better. Trust me. Trust my judgment. Trust that I know my own body and my own limits." It was the first real fight they'd had since marrying, and it left them both shaken. That night they lay on opposite sides of the bed, the space between them filled with hurt and misunderstanding. "Clara," Silas finally said, "I'm sorry." "I'm sorry too." "No, I mean it. You're right. I've been so focused on not losing you that I forgot to actually be with you." He turned toward her. "Rebecca's death broke something in me. I thought I'd fixed it, but this pregnancy opened all the old wounds. I'm not Rebecca." "I know. And that's not fair to you being compared to a ghost." He reached across the space, his hand finding hers. "You deserve better than my fear. I don't need you to not be afraid. I need you to be afraid with me, not at me." Clara laced their fingers together. "We're both scared. Let's be scared together." "Together," he agreed. The crisis that tested everything came in Clara's 8th month. A wildfire broke out in the valley, driven by wind and drought toward their ranch and 3 neighboring properties. The entire community mobilized to fight it. "You stay here," Silas ordered, grabbing buckets and tools. "Like hell I will. That's our ranch burning." "You're 8 months pregnant. I'm also the co-owner of this property. I'm fighting for it." Clara grabbed a wet blanket. "I'll stay back from the worst of it, but I'm not sitting idle while everything we built goes up in flames." Silas wanted to argue, but there was no time. The fire was moving fast. They fought for 6 hours. Clara hauling water despite her swollen belly. Silas and the other men creating fire breaks. Women and children wetting down roofs and moving livestock to safety. The smoke was so thick, Clara could barely breathe, her back screaming in protest, her hands blistered. "Clara, you need to stop," Tom Brennan's wife insisted. "Think of the baby." "I am thinking of the baby. If we lose the ranch, we lose everything. What kind of mother would I be if I let that happen without fighting?" They saved the ranch, but barely. When the fire finally burned out, stopped by a creek and exhausted fuel, everyone collapsed where they stood. Clara sat heavily on the ground, her body shaking with exhaustion. "Never again," Silas said, collapsing beside her. "Never again do you risk yourself like that. We risked ourselves. Together. That's what partners do. You could have gone into early labor. You could have fallen. You could have... But I didn't." Clara took his hand. "Stop listing disasters that didn't happen and celebrate the one we prevented." He pulled her into his arms, too exhausted to argue further. Around them, their neighbors were doing the same, embracing, crying, grateful to have survived. 2 weeks later, Clara went into labor. It started gradually cramping, that built slowly over hours. By the time Silas realized it was real labor, not false, Clara was already in serious pain. "Get Doc Morrison," she gasped between contractions. "I'm not leaving you." "Then send someone else. Go!" Tom Brennan's son rode for the doctor while Silas helped Clara into bed. She gripped his hand so hard, he thought bones might break. "Too soon," she panted. "It's too soon. I'm not due for another 3 weeks. Babies come when they come." Silas tried to sound calm, but his voice shook. "You're strong, Clara. You can do this." "What if I can't?" "Then I'll help you. We do this together, remember." Doc Morrison arrived an hour later to find Clara fully in labor, her face pale with pain and fear. "How is she?" Silas demanded. "Doing exactly what she should be doing. Labor's progressing normally. Baby's positioned right. I don't see any complications. Yet, Silas added darkly, don't borrow trouble, son. Your wife's strong. She'll get through this. Labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of Clara screaming, crying, gripping Silas's hand while he whispered encouragement and promises and prayers he didn't know he remembered. 14 hours of watching the woman he loved suffer and being completely powerless to help. I can see the head, Doc Morrison finally said. Next contraction, push hard. Clara pushed with everything she had left, her scream echoing through the cabin. And then, impossibly miraculously, a baby's cry joined hers. It's a girl, the doctor announced, holding up a tiny, furious, perfect infant. A healthy baby girl. Silas couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, could only stare at this small person who'd just entered the world. Let me see her, Clara demanded weakly. Doc Morrison cleaned the baby quickly and placed her on Clara's chest. Clara looked down at her daughter and started crying. She's perfect. She's tiny, Silas managed. She's ours. Clara touched the baby's face with shaking fingers. We made her, together. Silas finally moved, sitting on the edge of the bed, wrapping his arms around both of them. You did it. You're both here. You're both safe. Did you doubt me? Every second. He kissed Clara's sweaty forehead. But you proved me wrong. You keep proving me wrong about everything. Get used to it. They named her Rebecca Rose. Rebecca for the past, Rose for the future. She had Clara's determination from the start, crying loudly, when hungry, sleeping, fitfully demanding attention constantly. She's going to be trouble, Silas said, watching his daughter nurse for the third time that night. She's going to be strong, Clara corrected. Like her mother. God help us all. The community rallied around them in unexpected ways. Women who'd criticized Clara's independence brought food and baby clothes. Men who'd mocked Silas's partnership with his wife congratulated him on his daughter. Even Eleanor Whitmore traveled from Helena to meet the baby. She's beautiful, Eleanor said, holding Rebecca carefully. And she's going to grow up knowing her mother fought for women's rights. That's a legacy worth having. I'm not sure how much fighting I'll be doing with a baby, Clara admitted. Are you kidding? You'll fight harder now? Because you'll want her to grow up in a world where women have real choices. Eleanor handed Rebecca back. Motherhood doesn't diminish activism, Clara. It fuels it. Those words proved prophetic. As Rebecca grew, Clara found new ways to continue her work. She spoke less frequently, but more powerfully. She wrote letters to newspapers, advocating for women's property rights. She opened her home to women escaping abuse, teaching them skills, while caring for her daughter. Silas watched his wife transform into a mother without losing herself, and it changed him too. He became softer with Rebecca, but stronger in supporting Clara's work. He attended her speaking engagements, Rebecca in his arms, showing the community that partnership meant sharing everything, even parenting. When Rebecca was 6 months old, Margaret Hayes visited with news. The territorial legislature is considering a bill to allow women to own property in their own names, she announced. And Clara, they want you to testify. Me. You're the perfect example. You've built a successful ranch in partnership with your husband. You've proven women can handle business and property management. Your testimony could swing votes. Silas expected Clara to refuse to say she was too busy with the baby. Instead, she looked at him with fire in her eyes. When do they need me? They traveled to Helena as a family. Rebecca bundled against the cold, Silas driving the wagon. Clara testified for 2 hours, holding Rebecca the entire time, showing the legislators that women could be mothers and activists and business owners all at once. My ranch succeeds because my husband treats me as an equal partner, she told the assembled men. We make decisions together. We work together. We build together. That's not unusual or threatening, that's simply smart. And if you give women the right to own property, you'll see more partnerships like ours. More success stories. More prosperity for everyone. The bill passed by 3 votes. When the news reached Clara, she cried with joy. We did it, she told Silas. We actually changed the law. You changed the law. I just drove the wagon. No. Clara took his face in her hands. We did it together. Everything we've done together. That's what partnership means. As Rebecca grew into a toddler, the ranch thrived beyond their wildest dreams. The potato crop became legendary in the valley. Other ranchers adopted Clara's diversification strategy. The boarding house they'd built accommodated travelers passing through, bringing steady income. The cattle herd had been replenished and improved. But more than the material success, the ranch became known as a place of hope. Women fleeing bad situations knew they could find temporary shelter there. Young couples struggling with their marriages would visit to see what real partnership looked like. The community that had once mocked them now held them up as an example. On their 5-year anniversary, Silas gave Clara a gift, a new sign for the ranch entrance. Cade and Cade Ranch, it read, partners in everything. Clara laughed and cried at the same time. It's perfect. You're perfect. He pulled her close. You came here on a one-way ticket, answering a cold advertisement from a man who swore he'd never love again. And you turned my empty life into something worth living. You did the same for me. I came here running from a nightmare, and you gave me a dream I didn't know I could have. They kissed while Rebecca played nearby, a living symbol of everything they'd built together. That evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the Montana sunset, Clara reflected on how far they'd come. Do you remember what you said the day I arrived? She asked. I said a lot of stupid things that day. You said you didn't want my pity, and you sure as hell didn't want my love. Silas winced. I was an idiot. You were hurt. There's a difference. Clara leaned against him. But look at us now. We have love. We have partnership. We have a daughter and a thriving ranch and a community that respects us. We have everything you swore you didn't want. Because you refused to accept my limitations. You saw possibilities I couldn't see. He kissed her temple. You saved me, Clara. No, we saved each other. That's what love does. It gives you someone to be strong with, instead of someone to be strong for. Rebecca toddled over, demanding to be picked up. Silas lifted her, settling her between them. The three of them sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and red and purple. A family built on honesty, forged in struggle, strengthened by partnership. Clara thought about all the women she'd helped over the years, all the lives changed by her willingness to speak truth to power. She thought about the laws that had been changed, the minds that had been opened, the futures that had been rewritten. But mostly she thought about the simple miracle of sitting here with a man who'd learned to love again, and a daughter who would grow up knowing that women could be anything, do anything, build anything. They were brave enough to fight for. What are you thinking about? Silas asked. Everything. Nothing. How grateful I am that I answered that advertisement. Clara smiled. How grateful I am that you took a chance on a stranger. Best decision I ever made. Second best, Clara corrected. The best decision was choosing to actually love me instead of just tolerating me. That wasn't a decision. That was inevitable. He squeezed her hand. You're impossible not to love. Rebecca babbled something incomprehensible, pointing at the sunset. They laughed, neither understanding, but both responding anyway. This was their empire, Clara thought. Not money or land or success, though they had those things. Their empire was this, sitting together as the day ended, planning tomorrow, remembering yesterday, living fully in right now. Their empire was built on trust and respect, and the revolutionary idea that marriage could be partnership instead of ownership. Years later, when people asked Clara how she'd built such a successful ranch, helped pass such important legislation, raised such a strong daughter, she always gave the same answer. I found a partner who believed in me as much as I believed in myself. Everything else followed from that. And when they asked Silas how he'd overcome the grief that nearly destroyed him, how he'd learned to love again after such devastating loss, his answer never wavered. I stopped trying to control the future and started living in the present. And I married a woman who taught me that broken things can heal, that practical arrangements can become passionate partnerships, and that mail-order marriages can transform into love stories worth building a lifetime around. Their ranch still stands today, that sign still hanging at the entrance, a testament to two people who refused to accept limitations, who built something extraordinary out of simple necessity, who proved that the best foundations aren't built on romance or passion, but on respect, honesty, and the unwavering commitment to stand beside each other through absolutely everything life throws your way. Your